boys and girls, how are you today? I am Iron Little and I want you to join me on VC3 as I take you to the part of language arts. You will have lots of fun. So don't forget, VC3 every week. Join me right here. Hi boys and girls, how are you today? I am Iron Little and I want you to join me on VC3 as I take you to the part of language arts. You will have lots of fun. So don't forget, VC3 every week. Join me right here. Hi boys and girls, how are you today? I am Iron Little and I want you to join me on VC3 as I take you to the part of language arts. You will have lots of fun. So don't forget, VC3 every week. Join me right here. Hi boys and girls, how are you today? I am Iron Little and I want you to join me on VC3 as I take you to the part of language arts. You will have lots of fun. So don't forget, VC3 every week. Join me right here. Hi boys and girls, how are you today? I am Iron Little and I want you to join me on VC3 as I take you to the part of language arts. You will have lots of fun. So don't forget, VC3 every week. Join me right here. Hi boys and girls, how are you today? I am Iron Little and I want you to join me on VC3 as I take you to the part of language arts. You will have lots of fun. So don't forget, VC3 every week. Join me right here. Hi boys and girls, how are you today? I am Iron Little and I want you to join me on VC3 as I take you to the part of language arts. You will have lots of fun. So don't forget, VC3 every week. Join me right here.
All my years at the National Lottery, the jackpot has never been this big. This is a life-changing jackpot.
This is a record.
$880,000. You can't afford to miss this one.
With this kind of money, the possibilities are endless.
If you don't have a ticket as yet, you need to get one right now.
Remember, we're talking $880,000.
This check is written on your name.
You have to be in it to win it.
Avoid the long lines. Get your tickets now.
Hi boys and girls, how are you today? I am Iron Little, and I want you to join me on VC3 as I take you to the part of language arts. You will have lots of fun. So don't forget, VC3 every week. Join me right here.
Good afternoon, good day, good morning to everyone out there, and welcome back to the SVG Virtual Science Classroom. I am Miss Bacchus, and today we're going to do a very interesting topic. The boys would like it probably a little more than the girls, but that's okay. So we're going to be looking at machines in agriculture today. Machines in agriculture. Now, at the end of the lesson, you should know what a machine is, what are the different types of machines used in agriculture, and the different types of attachments that are used on the tractor to make farming work easier for the farmers. So, let's get started. What is a machine? A machine is a piece of instrument that is used to perform a particular task. Most persons would say that a machine is used to make work easier, especially for a farmer. And we are thankful for simple machines that we have. Now, you will know about different types of machines that you use. The refrigerator, that's a simple machine. You may have learned in physics about the lever, the pulley. And there are simple machines that we use on a day-to-day basis that do make our lives much easier. So in agriculture, we have a little bit more complex machines, and the first one we're going to look at is a bulldozer. Everybody knows what a bulldozer is, and many of you are fascinated by seeing the bulldozer at work. So you're going to school or coming home, and you see somebody doing some construction work with a bulldozer, and there you are standing up looking at it. So that right here that you're seeing is a bulldozer. The next equipment that is used is a backhoe. Now I know a lot of students call all of these instruments bulldozer, but they actually have different names. So the first one I showed you was a bulldozer. This one is a backhoe. Next we have an excavator. You will notice the difference with the excavator and the backhoe is that the backhoe and the bulldozer carry wheels, but the excavator carries a chain. So that's one difference that you can point out there to know the difference between those different types of machines. In agriculture, we mostly use a tractor. So there are different types of tractors. We have the two-wheel tractor and we have the four-wheel tractor. Now, attached to the tractor is a power shaft. So the power shaft on the tractor allows the farmer to connect different attachments to the tractor to get different work done on his farm. So let's look at the different types of attachments that you will see the farmer uses on his tractor. So the first one is a seeder. Now you will notice in the photo that the tractor is there and it is attached to the seeder. The seeder has 4 different compartments, and as the tractor glides along the land, it drops the seeds at different intervals. So the farmer can program it to put it every foot or every 2 feet, then the seeder will deposit a number of seeds into the ground. And this makes planting for the farmer much easier. Then we have what is called a disc plow. Now, if you notice, the disc plow has a disc shape. It is shaped like a disc. And the purpose of the disc plow is to plow heavy clay. So it helps to break up the particles of the clay. It helps to break it down to a finer tilt, and so the farmer can use it when he is plowing his land. Then we have the moldboard plow, and the moldboard plow is shaped like what you're seeing in the photograph here. And the purpose of the moldboard plow is to bury vegetation and other organic matter into the soil. So it helps to churn the soil and helps to turn it over, so it makes plowing much easier and also helps with the growth of crops. It makes the soil loose, makes the soil aerated, allows air and water to pass through it freely. Then we have the rotavator. Now, all of them have very similar functions. All the attachments that are placed on the tractor have different purposes, but they're all very similar. So in this picture, you are seeing the rotavator, and what the rotavator does is that it breaks up large clumps of soil into a much finer tilt. So you would have learned with your teacher about primary tillage and secondary tillage, and primary tillage is the breaking up of large clumps of soil, and secondary tillage is breaking down of the smaller clumps of soil into even finer and more loose particles. So the rotavator helps with getting the larger clumps into smaller pieces so that there's more aeration, there's better drainage, organisms can move through the soil more freely, roots are able to grow properly, they have the space, they don't have to compete with compaction of the soil. Then we have what is called the chisel plow. Now, if you look at the chisel plow, it looks like swords in the soil. And the swords helps to break up large clumps of soil. So maybe you have heavy clay, maybe you have compaction of the soil, and it's very hard for the farmer to plow. So he would use the chisel plow to break up the tough soil. The land was hard, so he used the chisel plow to break up the land and to break it apart. Then we have the harrow. Now, the function of the harrow is to cut up and integrate crop residues into the soil by means of a disc movement. So there's a circular movement in the soil, and this harrow helps to incorporate crop residues and organic manure and some humus that your teacher would have told you about, dead and decaying material that is on the surface of the soil, and bring it down more into the subsurface and the topsoil. Then we have the fertilizer spreader. Now you're going to put the fertilizer spreader into the funnel that you are seeing there. You attach it onto your tractor and you start to drive your tractor. And as you drive your tractor, you would realize that the spreader broadcasts the fertilizer onto your crops, and it makes the farmer's work easier, especially if he's dealing with a very large piece of land, maybe more than 10 hectares of land, and if he's planting a lot of crops. Then we have the liquid manure spreader. Now, this is where the farmer would use his organic matter or his feces from his animals. So let's say he may use the pig feces, he may use the cattle feces, scoop them all up together, put them into the manure spreader, add water with it, because if he just applies it like that, it will be too strong for the crop. So he would dilute it a little bit with water and leave it to cure so that it's not too strong for the plants, and then he would use a truck, a water truck with a pump, and it has a pipe that allows the manure to spread all over. It's something like what they have when they use in when they have wet fit. I know some of you like to go to wet fit, and when you go to wet fit and you see the water truck and you see they turn the hose upside down and it sprays the water all over, it's the same concept. So they put the manure into that water truck and they turn the pipe up and it sprays the manure all over. Then we have the combine harvester. Now, this is a tool that is used to harvest rice. It can be used to harvest wheat. It can be used to harvest sugarcane. It can be used to harvest corn, right, among other types of crops. And the farmer would use the harvester, attach it to the tractor, and as he moves through the land over the crops, they would harvest it for him and make his job much easier. Finally, we have the grass cutter. Now, this is for if you have an extensive span of lawn. So you have a big piece of lawn, the weed whacker wouldn't do, and the lawnmower wouldn't do, so you get yourself a grass cutter. Now the grass cutter is attached to the tractor, and underneath the pan of the grass cutter are blades that are spinning. And as the blade spins, it will cut the grass, and it would help to make the work of the farmer much easier. So these are some tools that we use in agriculture, some machines, some attachments that are attached to our tractors. And you can use each one of them in your own way to get the job done. It is important for you to be able to know each of them and what their jobs do. And you can find more information in your textbook, Agriculture Science for CSEC Examination by Ronald Ramharaksin, page 137, and that will give you a little more detail as to what each device does. Now, to close, I have a little homework for you. It's two past paper questions. Hold it up. The first one, I want you to look at the instruments being shown on the paper. You're going to name what is figure 1 and name figure 2. And then you are going to say what purpose you use each instrument or each equipment for. The second question, you're also going to be doing the same thing. And mind you, these are all past paper questions. All past paper questions. So, this is your homework. I want you to find the information, have fun doing so, and see you next time on the Virtual Science Classroom.
Hi boys and girls, how are you today? I am Ian Little, and I want you to join me on VC3 as I take you to the part of language arts. You will have lots of fun. So don't forget, VC3 every week. Join me right here.
Okay, so good morning, students. Today we are going to look at vectors, and the objective for the lesson would be to first come up with a definition for a vector. We calculate the magnitude of a vector and unit vector, and then as we further proceed with the lesson, we'll come up with other objectives. Okay, so basically a vector is a quantity that has magnitude and direction. So there are two main things that make up a vector. It must have magnitude and it must also have direction. Another word for magnitude would be size. Okay? And previously, if we want to represent a size, we normally use a number. Alright? So if we use the number 5, we know for sure that 5 means that there is 5 units included in that quantity. Alright? And we also use lines to represent length. So basically, if we have a line segment, which means that there is a starting point, so the line segment has a starting point and it has an ending point. And let's say we draw that line to be 5 centimeters. We're now going to convert this line segment to become a vector simply by inserting an arrow on it. Okay, so the arrow tells us the direction through which that line segment is moving. Because it is now a special item, we call it a vector, we have to give it a letter label. you can put any letter label there to say that that is the vector. So this vector that I have here is the vector A. Alright? So this is one way of representing a vector. The other way we can represent a vector is simply by counting the movement that we make from one point of the line segment to the other point, and we are going to fix that in an XY form. We always go in the X direction first, which is the horizontal, and then we follow in the Y direction, which is in the vertical form. Alright? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this line, I'm going to put it on a graph paper so we can appreciate how we are going to come up with the components, the values for the components. So let's assume that this is my graph paper, and I choose to start my line segment at this particular point here. Okay? And let's assume that this is the line that I have marked A. Okay, so it ends here. So I just take this line and I fit it into a graph paper. As I was saying, for us to come up with the components, we simply need to count how much we move from one point, and importantly, because the arrow is going this way, we have no choice but to start from this point. So let's count. From here we move 1, 2, 3, 4 places on the horizontal, and then 1, 2, 3 places on the vertical. So this vector A can be written in this form, where I move 4 places on the horizontal, so I put it like that, and 3 places on the vertical, so I put it like that. This form is, it always goes with an X followed by a Y movement. So this is basically the vector form that we always move when we are trying to come up with the components, right? We also looked at how to come up with the length for the vector. If it is drawn to scale, you can simply use your ruler and you can measure to get the length of the vector. Otherwise, if you have it in this form where you have the components, we can use our Pythagoras theorem, because this movement on the horizontal here was 4, and this movement on the vertical was 3. So this is 3 on the vertical, 4 on the horizontal. Alright, and you can see that we generate a right angle triangle here, which is, this is 90 degrees. We could use the Pythagoras theorem, which says that this hypotenuse sine, which would be our vector, the length for the vector A, would be the square root of 4 square plus 3 square. Okay? I must tell you, when we are writing the length of the vector, usually we put it like that. Okay, so you put some bars at this side just to understand how we are coming up with the value for the length. And this would be the square root of 16 plus 9 root 25, which gives us 5. So this vector has 5 units. It's 5 units, it's 5, the length of it is 5. Okay, so this would be for the magnitude. This is the magnitude here. How we find the magnitude of the vector. Quite straightforward. Okay, now for a unit vector, a unit vector is where we have a vector with the length 1 unit. So basically, if this vector is of 5 units, to get it to be 1 unit, we are basically going to take the vector and divide it by its length. Alright? So the unit vector for A is going to be taking the vector A and divide it by its length, which is 5. Okay, and this means that each of the components, 4 is divided by 5, and also 3 is divided by 5. Alright? That should not be too difficult for us. So I think these are the most simpler parts of the vectors that we need to understand. Now we're going to go a little bit more further. as we continue with our next lesson. Okay, so class, we are going to continue with the different types of vectors now. And there are two types of vectors. There is the free vector and there's also the position vector. The free vector, it doesn't have an origin from where we start drawing the vector. Whereas the position vector, it starts from the origin 0, 0. And the origin we are talking about here is when we look at the graph, the Cartesian plane, the XY Cartesian plane to be specific. Alright? Here we have two graphs. This one, I try to depict the Cartesian, the XY plane where I have an axis here for the Y coming down here, and this one we have the axis for the X going across here. So X is always horizontal and Y is always vertical. Now if we were to insert some numbers on this, it would be okay. And let's say every space here is equal. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And to the left of the number line, we have negative numbers, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Likewise, if we were to move up, it would be positive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if we come down, naturally it would be negative. -1, -2, 3, 4, 5, and -6. Okay? So on the horizontal, we are saying this is our X, and on the vertical, that's our Y. Okay? So now I want us to try to differentiate what happens when we are drawing a position vector as compared to a free vector. The example we did in the previous class, this is an example of a free vector. Okay? Now if I want to draw this same vector here, as a position vector, it must begin from the origin here, 0, 0. Okay? But the movements, we're going to use the same movements, and we are supposed to end up with the same size vector, the same length. But the only difference is it starts from 0, 0. So let's try to get the vector. So we move 4 across, 1, 2, 3, 4 across on the right, and we move 3 up, 1, 2, 3. So this is the line segment for the vector, and we must put an arrow on it to show where we are traveling, which direction we're moving. Okay, and remember I said that there are two differences, right? So the first difference we identify is that it must start from the origin. The second difference is when we are labeling a position vector. Naturally, because it begins from the origin, here now we will have to put the end of the movement. We give a letter label at the end of the movement here. So naturally, when we are writing the vector for OA, it will look like this. O to A is equal to 4, 3. Look at how I write this one. When I wrote this one in the class previously, and pardon me, I was supposed to put A underneath or over that. When I write the vector for A here as a free vector, I put it like that. Okay? So the difference you can see is how you represent it. O to A, and this one is just simply putting the common letter A like that. Okay? So class, we are back again, continuing with vectors. Now we are going to look at scalar multiple and parallel vectors. And to do this, we are going to use the diagram that we already have. Now if you were to draw, for example, B, which is a separate vector, 4, 3. Now, Remember, this is our free vector, okay? So this is our free vector. So which means we can start from anywhere on our diagram. Let's assume that I will start from, let's say, at this point. And I'm going to try to get 4, 3. Sorry, let's use this point. And we're going to get 4, 3. So we count from here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. What I want us to see is when we are finished producing this vector, let's say this is our vector for B, let's label that B. You can appreciate from looking that the line for A and the line for B seems to be parallel to each other. Okay? Before we establish the facts, let's do another example. Let's come up with a vector C. And let's assume that C is the vector, let's say 8, 6. Okay? Remember, we can start from anywhere again. So we have the vector C, which is 8, 6. Let's start from, let's say here. Right? So we want to get 8, 6. So from here we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2. And notice whenever I stop, I count when I move from that point. So from here I got 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is where I ended. Let's try that again to make sure we are correct. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we are confirmed, we are correct. And let's join the points. Okay? And now we put in our arrow and we say this is now C. Again, you can appreciate that A is parallel to B and B is also parallel to C. But there is a slight difference in the length of C as compared to the vector B and the vector A. Okay? And we can make some adjustment to the vector C so that it uses the vector A or the vector B and a multiple is applied to it. We call that a scalar. So we're going to know the scalar, which is just a multiple that was used to apply to A to obtain C. So we can say C, which is 8, 6, is equal to twice 4, 3. Alright? So now if you were to even measure this, you can see that you will get that the vectors for A and B would be of the same length. But when you compare that to the vector for C, C is now going to be twice the length. So the scalar we are talking about is this 2 here. C is going to be twice the length for the vector A or the vector B. Okay? If you were to put this in the form of a ratio, okay, if you put this in the form of a ratio, we can appreciate that C is equal to twice what? Twice what? Yes, twice the vector A. Okay? Okay. So this is the idea of parallel vectors and using a scalar. Now we're going to look at addition of vectors. Addition and subtraction of vectors. Addition and subtraction of vectors. And what I will do is, first of all, we will look at addition and subtraction of vectors in the arithmetic form. We use the numbers to show the addition and subtraction of vectors, and then we will also use the graphs to show the addition and subtraction of vectors. So I'm going to erase this part. Okay. Now let's assume that we have a vector b, and I'm going to deal with the free vectors first. So we have a vector t. Let's assume t because we already have b. So t is 1, 3. We already have a to be 4, 3. And let's assume we have r, common letters. Let's assume we have r to be minus 4, or let's say minus 5, and 1, for example. Okay? If we want to show the vector t plus a, the vector t plus a is where we're going to use this t and just add it to this a. Components matches with components. So the x component for t matches with the x component for a, and likewise the y component for t matches with the y component for a. So this is, we can use it in column vector form. So the addition 1, 3 plus 4, 3, which gives me, and I like to work in a vertical format rather than equal. So 1 plus 4 will give me 5, good, and 3 plus 3 will give me 6. Now this result, let's put this on top. So the result that we have here is one vector for t plus a. Now t plus a does not change, it stays as t plus a. This is what it will stay as, t plus a. Okay? And that's done. So t plus a is 5, 6. We can now show this vector addition on the free graph that we have there, and we see the result of how we get 5, 6. Good? Let's do that. So let us begin at, let's say this point. Okay? So let us begin at that point. So we're going to add t plus a. So t, as we know it, is 1, 3, which means 1 across and 3 up. So let's do that. 1 across, 1, 2, 3 up. So this is now the vector for t. So this is the vector for t. Okay, that's t. Now we're going to add to t the vector for a. Importantly, because we already ended there for t, we have to start here for a, because we're adding t plus a. So let's start here for a. So a is now 4, 3. So let's have it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. I hope we can differentiate the differences, okay? So this is now the line for the vector a, added to the vector t. So let's put an arrow there. So this is now our vector a. Alright? The vector for t plus a would be when we started at t and we end at a. So if we draw this line, then t plus a, and note how I put the arrow because I started from down here and I'm going up. The vector t plus a is this one, t plus a. And that's finished there. Okay? Because we would have already done some work previously. Let's black this out so we can see clearly what is happening. So here, what we have done, we have shown how to add the vector t plus the vector a to get the resulting vector t plus a. Appreciate that t plus a is one vector. And if you want to go and use the vector that you got for t plus a, which is 5, 6. Starting from here, we are going to end back up there. So let's start from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We end back up with the vector 5, 6. Okay? So that is the addition of vectors when it is in the free form. And you see that we can use this here as well to get it. Now, when it is in the position vector form, okay, it's a bit different because position vectors start from the origin. So we have OA, so now we are dealing with the position vector, okay? So OA, we have it as 4, 3. Now, if we start a position vector for t, it will be OT. And notice again, the letters become capital, okay? So OT equals to 1, 3. Okay, and sometimes you put a little arrow on top there, just to give the direction. OT will have to start at O. Alright? So if I was to draw OT, it starts from O, so we go 1 across, 1, 2, 3 up, right? Good? Alright. So this is now my vector for OT. And I put T to the end of the vector. Okay? Now if I want to add these two vectors, because both of them start from O, and O is our common point, when I'm adding them, the question will give you to come up with a vector for T, A, for example. So you want to get from T to A. Looking at it carefully, class, what is going to happen? Because the line gives you where you move, if you're at T, there isn't a line connecting you directly to A. But however, we can move along T to O plus O to get over to A. Alright? So to get from T to A, one way of working it out is just by mapping. I can map T to O plus O to A. Notice that the two letters inside here are the same. Alright? Which leads us to something interesting. If we change the direction, naturally, the movement we made in the previous direction becomes the opposite, or the sign changes. So if I want to get from T to O now, I already have O to T. So to get from T to O, basically we are going to change direction that we move for the X. So this becomes a -1. We change direction that we move in the Y, it becomes a -3. And we add that with the vector for OA. 4, 3. Okay? And this one you just use your calculator again, nice and easy. So -1 plus 4 will give you +3. And -3 plus 0 will give you 0. -3 plus 3 gives me 0. This is the addition of vectors using the arithmetic form. But naturally, if you have the graph paper, it is easier for you to just count. Okay? You count how you will move from one point to get to the other. And if we move right, it's positive, up it's positive, down it's negative, left it's negative. So from here, at T, to get to A, we simply move 1 right, 2 right, 3 right. We don't move up or down, so the up or down movement is 0. So from T to A, we can clearly say TA is +3 right, 0 up or down. Okay, so this is getting the answer directly from the graph. And this one is where we use the arithmetic method and combine vectors.
Hi boys and girls, how are you today? I am Ian Little and I want you to join me on VC3 as I take you to the part of language arts. You will have lots of fun. So don't forget, VC3 every week. Join me right here.
Hello students, I am Mrs. Solin and today we will be looking at error recognition. Error recognition refers to the ability to recognize or detect the presence of an error within a sentence. The error recognition section of the CSEC Paper 1 assesses your ability to recognize 3 common errors in language use. In this lesson, we will be examining 1. The tendency to overwrite. That is, to repeat the same thing using similar words or to overemphasize a point, phrase, or word. Sentences with this type of error are described as being too wordy or repetitive or as containing unnecessary words. So that is the phrasing that you will see in your CSEC instructions. For example, in this sentence, she was greedy and gluttonous and wore clothes that were oversized and much too big. The words greedy and gluttonous are similar, and so there is no need for both. And wore clothes that were oversized and much too big convey the same meaning. So again, either would be enough. This kind of needless repetition is what is considered an error in language use. It has no meaningful effect on the sentence. Let's look at another example. The political meeting was well attended by droves of people forming a large crowd. What's repetitive here? If something is well attended, it conveys the same meaning as droves of people. Droves in this context means many. So, the political meeting was well attended by many people. That is redundant. More so, a large crowd, giving again the impression of a large gathering. Not necessary. Are you following? Good. So, when we look at descriptors, we need to make sure that they add meaning to the sentence and that we're not just adding them in to make up word count. Ready to tackle one by yourself? Let's go. In my opinion, I think that your suggestion is impractical. I'll give you 2 minutes. What did you come up with? Good. Your opinion means the same as what you think. And so, either or would suffice. Now, here's one for you to do on your own. The teacher pleaded with the students, begging them to be quiet and not to make noise. Remember, if it means the same thing, there's no need for it. What did you come up with? Awesome. If you are pleading, you are begging. And if you want them to be quiet, then you don't want them to make noise. Excellent work. So let's recap. One common error in language use is overwriting. That is being redundant. So when a sentence is too wordy or repetitive, you must recognize it for what it is, an error. Thank you for listening.
Hi boys and girls, how are you today? I am Iron Little and I want you to join me on VC3 as I take you to the part of language arts. You will have lots of fun. So don't forget, VC3 every week. Join me right here.
Welcome back. I am Mrs. Solin, and today we will continue to look at error recognition. The error recognition section of the CSEC Paper 1 assesses your ability to recognize 3 common errors in language use. Last time, we looked at errors in overwriting, that is, the tendency to be repetitive or to be redundant. In this lesson, we will be examining the tendency to use cliches and to misuse or mix metaphors. What is a cliche? A cliche is a phrase or opinion that is overused to the point of losing its original meaning or effect. For example, ignorance is bliss. The grass is always greener on the other side. You can't judge a book by its cover. Sound familiar? Very familiar? Too familiar? That's what makes them cliches. Ignorance is bliss implies that if you don't know, you're happier. The grass is always greener on the other side implies that if things aren't working out for you, it may appear that it's working out for somebody else. And you can't judge a book by its cover means that when you look at somebody, what you see may not be all that they appear to be. And so, we use these cliches so regularly that they have lost their impact, they have lost their original meaning, and they no longer mean anything. Now, what is a metaphor? A metaphor is a figure of speech that makes an implied comparison. So that's what makes it different from a simile. A simile is a direct comparison using as or like or than. But a metaphor is implied. And it's a comparison, an implied comparison between 2 unrelated things that share some common characteristic. For example, the calm lake was a mirror. Now in that example, 2 unrelated things, a calm lake and a mirror, are being compared on the common characteristic that they are both reflective. Let's look at another example. He was a beast in the boxing ring. In this example, the boxer, the pronoun he that is referred to there, is being compared to a beast to show how aggressive he was in the boxing ring. Now, how do you misuse or mix a metaphor? one misuses or mixes up a metaphor by jumbling two or more metaphors together, often illogically, meaning when you mix them, they no longer make sense. The image that is created does not work well. For example, in the early years of one's life, one must sow and build in order to reap the harvest of achievement before the final curtain. It sounds nice, doesn't it? But it really doesn't make sense. Here you have a metaphor of reaping, of sowing and reaping, mixed with a metaphor of performance. These images do not work well together, and so they are an error in the sentence. Ready to try one by yourself? No, I'll assist you. Mr. Speaker, I smell a rat. I see him floating in the air, but mark me, sir, I will nip him in the bud. I'm going to give you a few minutes and then I'll assist. Think about it. What are the metaphors that you see? And should they be together? All right, so here you go. You have the sensory metaphor of smelling a rat mixed with a floating metaphor mixed with a nipping him in the bud metaphor. These metaphors do not work well together, and so the sentence is illogical. Now, I think you've got it. And so, you're going to try this one by yourself. When he could find no support for his argument, he began to grasp at straws. Now remember, this section is both cliches and mixed or misused metaphors. So take a look at that sentence and see if you can recognize the error in the sentence. When he could find no support for his argument, he began to grasp at straws. Take your time. Cliches or mixed metaphors. I think you've got it. The cliche there is the grasping at straws. It has been so overused that it has lost its impact and adds nothing to the sentence. So let's recap. Error recognition comprises of recognizing 3 types of errors. In our last video, we looked at overwriting, which is the tendency to be repetitive or redundant. And in this lesson, we looked at cliches and mixed and misused metaphors. In our third video, we will be looking at errors of grammar and diction. Thank you for listening.
Hi boys and girls, how are you today? I am Iron Little and I want you to join me on VC3 as I take you to the part of languages. You will have lots of fun. So don't forget, VC3 every week. Join me right here.
Hello students, welcome back. I am Mrs. Solin, and in our previous lessons we have been looking at error recognition. For those of you who missed it, please go and check out those videos. But error recognition is the ability to recognize or detect an error within a sentence. There are 3 common types of errors that will appear on your CSEC paper 1. In our previous videos, we looked at errors in overwriting. We looked at errors in cliches and mixed metaphors. And today, we will be looking at errors of grammar and diction. There are many grammatical errors that can be made. So today, I'm only going to highlight a few. I'm going to start with wrong singulars and plurals and tie that in with subject-verb agreement. So when the noun refers to one object, it is said to be singular, and when it refers to more than one object, it is said to be plural. Mathematics is singular. It sounds plural, but it is singular, and so it should take a singular verb. So this ties in nicely with errors that are made with subject-verb agreement. The subject and the verb must agree in number. That is, both subject and verb need to be singular or both need to be plural. He, singular, calls, singular, me every day. They, plural, call, plural, me every day. Second common grammatical error, mistakes with each, every, either, and neither. These are all singular and must be followed by a verb in the singular. For example, each of them was running towards the gate, not were. Neither of the boys is here, not are. Every one of the pens was lost. So although you are hearing boys and pens, and you are thinking, but isn't that plural? Because of the each, because of the neither, because of the either, you have to use a singular verb. Third common grammatical error is personal pronouns in the wrong order. For example, I and my friend is incorrect. Instead, it should be my friend and I. Fourth grammatical error. Your antecedent and your relative pronoun. Now I know you have forgotten these terms, so let's refresh your memory. The noun or pronoun which goes before a relative pronoun and to which the relative pronoun refers is called the antecedent. And if you forgot, your relative pronoun is one which is used to refer to nouns mentioned previously. So who, whom, whose, which, that. So for example, here is the book which I promised you. In that sentence, book is the antecedent of which in this sentence. You follow? Let me take that again. Here is the book which I promised you. So book is the antecedent of which in this sentence. Now here's the rule. It is best to have the antecedent and the relative pronoun together. For example, listen to this sentence. I drove in a small car across the mountain which had only 3 wheels. I drove in a small car across the mountain which had only 3 wheels. Did the mountain have 3 wheels? No, the car did. So we need to put, I drove across the mountain in a small car which had only 3 wheels. And that's a common error that's made. 5. Unrelated participles. Now the present participle of a verb ends in ing. You remember that? Slowly coming back. The present participle of a verb ends in ing. And often, this participle is wrongly used by not referring to any particular subject. And we get that a lot. So for example, knowing all the answers, the exam was easy for me. Where's your subject? There's no subject in that sentence. The exam is the subject of was, but not of the participle knowing. The exam did not know the answers. So your sentence should be, since I knew all the answers, the exam was easy for me. You caught that one? Let's go over. Knowing all the answers, the exam was easy for me. It should be, since I knew all the answers, the exam was easy for me. So, let's try a few. Sitting on a gate, a wasp stung me. What's the error there? Think about the 5 common errors in grammar that we went through just now. Which one is this? Unrelated participle. So, while I was sitting on a gate, a wasp stung me. Following? Good. Number 2. Either of the 2 brothers are invited. Which grammatical error is this? Either of the 2 brothers are invited. Think about it. It's a mistake with either. When you have either, you need a singular verb. Very good. So, either is invited. Number 3. I ate a popsicle in the class which dirtied my shirt. Think in caps. I ate a popsicle in the class which dirtied my shirt. Your antecedent and your relative pronoun. So, in the class, I ate a popsicle which dirtied my shirt. The popsicle is what did the dirtying, not the class. Number 4, there were some boys playing in the yard. What's the common grammatical error here? What's the common grammatical error here? There were some boys playing in the yard. Very good. Subject-verb agreement. There were, because a plural noun takes a plural verb. Very good. And last one. I and Gloria will do the baking for the sale. What's the error there? Personal pronoun in the wrong order. So this should be Gloria and I will do the baking for the sale. Did you get all? Good job. Now let's look at errors in diction. Now mind you, on your CSEC paper, these are going to come together. They are not separate, they're going to come together. So it's either going to be an error in grammar or an error in diction. You're going to be asked to identify 3 types of errors. And we looked at the other 2 types in our previous videos. So go and check those videos out. Let's look now at our errors in diction. Now there are 2 main sources of errors in diction. First, choosing the wrong word. This can happen because of confusion, because the words sound alike but are spelled differently. And the second reason is because the meaning of the word isn't fully understood. So you kind of have an idea of what the word means, and so you use it in the sentence and you end up having incorrect diction. It happens to the best of us. It's okay. So, for example, I want to pursue the document in more detail. What's wrong there? Did you mean that you want to chase the document? No? Then perhaps you meant to use peruse. I want to peruse the document in more detail. So, to prevent errors in diction, you should build your vocabulary. And a reading is an excellent way to build your vocabulary. Let's tackle some by yourselves. Well, let's do it together. Let's start off together. She used all the stationery. Stationery with the A means at a standstill. We want stationery with the E. Now, a good way of remembering the difference between the two is that A, at a standstill, E, envelopes. Because stationery with the E refers to writing material, and stationery with the A means being at a stop. So it can't be she used all the being at a stop. Number 2, he proved to be my ally in the disagreement. What's the incorrect diction there? Ally. We want to say that we had a friend in the disagreement, not that we had a narrow passageway in the disagreement. And number 3, I will accept the award on her behalf. Yes, that one jumped out. I will accept the award on her behalf. So these are common errors in diction. And as I said, they occur when 1, we use words that sound the same but have a different meaning, or 2, when we aren't really clear on the meaning of the word. Here are a few that you can do on your own. Number 1, neither of the boys are allowed to leave. Think about it. Think about all the common errors that we looked at and see which one that fits. Neither of the boys are allowed to leave. That's good. When you have neither, it is singular, so is. Combing my hair, I fell asleep. What is the error? Excellent. This should be while I was combing my hair, I fell asleep. There was great dissent among the crowd. That's a tricky one. Think about it. Good job. I don't want to say that there was great downward movement among the crowd. I want to say that there was great discord or disagreement among the crowd. She laughed at his compliment. That's a hard one. Give it some thought. You can ask a friend. What did the friend say? Did the friend realize that there was an E here? And so this means a full number of? She wants to laugh at his compliment with an I. Compliment with an I means praise, flattery. And number last one. Each of her daughters are successful. That should be a breeze. Excellent. Each, singular, so we must have a singular verb. Now, those are just a few common errors in grammar and diction that you may meet when you are doing your exam. That brings us to the end of our error recognition session. We looked at 3 types of errors. You have your errors of overwriting, errors of cliches and mixed and misused metaphors. And today we looked at errors of grammar and diction. Thank you for listening.
Hi boys and girls, how are you today? I am Iron Little and I want you to join me on VC3 as I take you to the part of language arts. You will have lots of fun. So don't forget, VC3 every week. Join me right here.
My grandmother and our ancestors before, most houses and households I went to, actually, just as I enter the house, right in front of me in the door, it's there, a grass mat.
The evil man got a plan and they aim, the cookie.
Hi boys and girls, how are you today? I am Iron Little and I want you to join me on VC3 as I take you to the part of language arts. You will have lots of fun. So don't forget, VC3 every week. Join me right here.